The Batman is directed by Matt Reeves and stars Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz, Jeffrey Wright, Andy Serkis, Colin Farrell, Paul Dano, John Turturro, and a host of others. And it takes up in the second year of Batman's life when a Riddler, a sadistic serial killer, begins murdering key political figures in Gotham. Batman is forced to investigate the city's hidden corruption and question his own family's involvement. If you can argue that Wolverine is Marvel's most iconic character, then I think a lot of people would agree that when it comes to the big screen especially, DC's fan favorite would be the Batman. And this has been, of date, I think the darkest take on the character. But is it the best? That's a discussion that most people are having right now. And I'm going to give my own 2 cents on this. Keep in mind, I am not the biggest Batman fan out there. I have my favorites. Batman is one of them. I adore the comics, and I think it's his work, his stories are some of the best DC has had to offer. Went to see this one. I got to see it in IMAX, which I recommend most people try to see this in a well calibrated theater. By that I mean somewhere where the screen and the sound is at optimum levels, because visually this is one of the darkest Batman films I've seen to date. And by dark, I don't just mean the themes of it. It definitely skirts the line of R-rated, and I think they should have just gone that way and call it a day. But yeah, visually it's very dark, and I think if you go to see this in a theater that maybe the screen is not the best quality, you're gonna struggle to see a lot of what's going on. It did remind me a little bit of that whole battle final season of Game of Thrones, and we all had to be raising the brightness of our television. Thankfully, like I said, I saw this at IMAX, so I was able to see this the way it was intended to be seen, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed a hell of a lot of it because I really love noir type films. I love this kind of gumshoe detective, beaten down, gritty looking cities, and Gotham is definitely at its grittiest and grimiest here. I was thinking to all the other Batman films I've seen, and I don't think I've ever seen Gotham look this how to put it, disgusting might be the word I'm looking for. It's like New York in the 70s, I guess. And I have no idea why people would live there. But yeah, this is what Gotham looks like. But it's all gorgeous in its own way. It all works in its own way. And as does the look of this Batman and the suit of this Batman. Not a huge fan of the cowl, but I did love the suit itself. And the way it looked on camera, and the way it looked in those sepia tones and stuff that they used for this movie. There's a lot of browns and, it's kind of rusty looking colors, dark colors like that. It all worked really well, and it does kind of feel like a companion piece to the Joker, even though they don't line up time-wise, that sort of thing. But it does feel like it could fit in that same universe. So yeah, visually this one definitely worked for me. And this is from somebody who loves my comic book stuff. Very bright and very colorful. But again, this is the Batman, and he works. He's one of those characters that can work in the colorful world and in the darker world because of who he is, And of course, the score here, it's one of the best ever. I am not one of those people that really immerse myself in a score, and a friend of mine, Tracy, had sent out the score, Riddler's score, and I was like, what the hell, this is insanely good. So I really did pay attention to the score here, and it all works, it all blends so well together to give you this sense of just lack of hope. It's like most of this film, there's this lack of hope, there's just this sense that everything is at the worst it could possibly be, and then they pull the rug out from underneath you, which takes me into the acting and the characters here. And I have to say, some of the best versions of Batman characters we've ever seen are in this film. Robert Pattinson's the Batman. I was so happy to see somebody take on this version of Batman. Year one, if you want to call it that way. This is a young, raw, angry Bruce Wayne slash Batman. This is not somebody who is in that level of Zen control that we see in an older Batman, that we expect from an older Batman who would not allow enemies to get to him and that sort of thing. An older Batman who's thinking 3-4 steps ahead. This is somebody who is still suffering a lot of pain. He's angry at everybody. He's lashing out at poor Alfred. He hates himself to the point where you barely ever see him as Bruce Wayne without some form of Batman in that scene, whether his eyes are covered in the black paint, that he wears to hide his identity, or he's halfway in the suit or halfway out of it. This is not a man who is happy to be himself. He's happiest when he's hitting something, when he's lashing out. And it was so good to see this version of Batman. I really want to see a year one Superman as well, because you read the comics, they're so good, those early versions of these characters, because they're not where we expect them to be. They're not who we know them to be. And I think Patterson does a fantastic job of bringing that to life, bringing that sense of this lost boy to this man, to this young man, while still trying to do something to live up to the Wayne legacy, as tarnished as that legacy might be. We'll get into that a little bit. We have Zoe Kravitz, of course, as Catwoman, and I have to say, while Michelle Pfeiffer still reigns supreme for me, I'm gonna tie Zoe. I think I'm gonna tie that, because this version of Catwoman, again, I'm a huge, I read all comics, guys. I read Image, Dark Horse, DC, Marvel. But the DC run recently, the stories have been so damn good. And the Catwoman run has been excellent. And I really like that this version of Catwoman, it's not just about, the big screen, the cinematic versions of Catwoman, television versions have always relied heavily on her sex appeal. They treat her like simply as this hot piece of ass kind of character. And it's a disservice to Selina Kyle. And I love that Zoe Kravitz and Matt Reeves, the writers, they came up with this much more grounded version. This is some of what we see in the comics. This is some of Selina's backstory playing out here with their own spin on it. I love that they went this more grounded route. I also love her fight scenes. I think that it was really nice to see this kind of sleek, fast martial arts style against, just to compare against Batman's more brutal, bruiser, kind of brawler style of fighting. I thought it was nice to see it. It wasn't exactly the same, that sort of thing. I was really laughing at the hood. I was like, why would the whole costume be leather and she would wear basically a torn beanie on her face? But whatever, Okay, again, it's like, I don't know what it is with the headpieces. I did not like the cowl, the Batman cowl. I thought the back of it was too rounded. And I kept laughing out loud every time I saw Catwoman's beanie mask thing. But again, the performances are what we're talking about here, and I really like those two performances. Of course, we have Jeffrey Wright as Commissioner Gordon. We have Colin Farrell as the Penguin, Paul Dano as the Riddler, this is what everybody's been talking about. We have John Turturro, the great John Turturro, as Carmine Falcone, I think it is. Yeah. These are the characters. They all worked really well together, but the standout definitely for me, Colin Farrell, the Penguin, Paul Dano, the Riddler. Dano's Riddler brought to mind Mindhunters. The television, the Netflix series Mindhunters. He has he was just giving off serial killer vibes. Like, I've never thought I would ever see a version of the Riddler that looked like this. Some people might even say it's not quite the Riddler. And I was thinking of the comics, The Jokes and Riddles run, I think, is one of the darkest versions of the Riddler I've seen in comics. That run, made me think of that a bit, meshed together with Mindhunters, and that sort of serial killer like thinking, this intellectual villain as opposed to a physical one. It was really interesting to see, and I thought he nailed that. Paul Dano has always done weird really well, if you've seen his other movies, so he just took that up like 5 notches here. And I love the look of the Riddler. I have no complaints about that costume. I like the headpiece. I like everything there. Nice original take on it. Penguin, I mean, Colin Farrell disappeared. I was blown away. The makeup, if somebody doesn't win an award for that makeup, they've been done a great disservice. But it wasn't just about the makeup. Farrell became the Penguin. He nailed that. And it wasn't just a cartoonish version of the Penguin. I do like the little touch of when he was tied up. We got a little bit of that. But no, we got a man that could actually exist in the real world. Of course, it's been a very grounded Batman movie. Farrell stole every scene he was in, is what I'm trying to say. We don't get to see him go up against like Dano. I don't get to see a comparison there. But every scene he had, every scene he was in, he was the funniest, most dynamic thing in that scene. And I'm so excited to see that this spin-off with him. It makes me more excited to see that and where they're going with that, because he was amazing there. And Jeffrey Wright, weakest in the bunch, in my opinion. Not the actor's fault. I felt like the way the character was written. I mean, yes, this is not Commissioner Gordon, so to speak. He's not there yet. So it's not that character. But at the same time, we are accustomed to this dynamic between Gordon and Batman. And I like when it's just kind of the two of them against, trying to defend Gotham. He's always been this man who, he has a very strict moral code, very strict moral compass. And to see Batman in scenes where he's walking among other police officers and they're looking at him like, what is this weirdo doing here? It was jarring. It was one aspect of the story that did not work for me personally, was Batman being not accepted by the police, but being allowed to investigate openly. I don't know. It didn't work for me. I get what they were kind of going for. But he's not your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man type. There's a lot of people, even in this, they portray him as somebody that people don't trust. And then the story consists of a lot of police corruption. So it was just hard for me to accept or believe that the Batman, a vigilante, would be allowed to walk amongst the police like that. I didn't buy it. And for me, it was one aspect of the story that doesn't really work for me. I've only seen this movie once. I don't know if there are other parts of it. Everything else I really enjoyed. But every time that popped up, I'm not going to lie, it was a bit jarring. And it did disconnect me a bit from everything else. So acting wise, yes, A+. Visuals, A+. Sound design, A. I'm getting into the story now, and story-wise, I dig this. I dig that whole noir thriller they were going for. Like everybody's saying, it's definitely inspired by Fincher's Zodiac. I know there's some people that may be a bit thrown by how there's not a lot of action in this. Is not that type of Batman movie. I did appreciate I appreciated that this was one of those Batman movies where you actually got a lot of Batman and not so much the villains, because it is his story, and he's learning about himself, and he's learning about his family, and he's learning truths and that sort of thing. So we get to focus on Batman, and this is not something that I've seen before, guys, not to this level, and I really appreciated that. I did like the mystery, the thriller. I did think Riddler made a fantastic foe, and I thought he was portrayed really well. Not silly, but somebody that would actually be a problem for Batman. That said, um, it is a story that, it's like I said, it's really dark, it's really grounded, and I'm not gonna lie, there's a part of me that missed the more fantastical elements that you would find in a comic book. Now I know Batman, this is a character everybody writes super serious, super serious all the time. Not counting Joel Schumacher, who went way left, way left with it. He went a little too far into the comic book element. He made it seem really ridiculous. But I'm a Burton fan. Like, Batman Returns to me is one of the most perfect Batman films out there. I have that ranked really high, guys. That's like my number 2. So I did miss the more fantastical elements, and every now and again something cool would happen, like the whole batarang in the chest and that kind of thing, and I would be snapped back into that comic book world. And I know, like I said, I know for some people this is going to be perfect for them because it's so deeply grounded in reality. But I feel like when you do that, it's almost like you're saying you despise the comic book aspect of things. So I just kind of missed that. I just wish there was a bit more fantastical elements at play here. Just a little more balance with that stuff. I did like the Batmobile though. I thought that was badass. The sound design. I did mention I like the sound design. But I did miss the more oomph of, those songs in those fight sequences. You really feel the impact of a punch or a hit or a kick. Here it's a lot more subdued, and so it's played, definitely done more realistically. So a punch wouldn't sound like it would sound in, let's say, Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League. I mean, every single one of these directors have made a different type of Batman. So this is a different type of Batman. It's gonna appeal to some. I think this is gonna be kind of divisive. This is gonna be one of those movies that I think is gonna appeal to some people, and others are just gonna not take to it. And then you're gonna have the ones who, they're gonna watch it, maybe say they love it, and then on multiple viewings or 5 years from now, they may change their minds about it. I feel like it's that type of movie for some people. For me, I think it's a really well thought out, for the most part, with the whole Batman with the police thing, like I said. It's well acted for sure. It's got a great look aesthetically, in terms of Gotham being the type of gritty, disgusting city that I don't understand why people live there. Yeah, so the cinematography, the score, the acting, some issues with the story aside, overall it's a really solid story, a really good take on a young version of Batman. I would give this an 8 out of 10. And for me, it's not my favorite Batman film. I would still say The Dark Knight would be up there for me. Like I said, Batman Returns up there for me. I don't quite know where this one would fall, whether it would be second or third. I've only seen it once, while I've seen those films multiple times. But this is definitely a solid addition to the mythos and a wonderful film on its own. It's one of those movies like Winter Soldier where the comic book stuff is, you could even put that aside and this would still be a fantastic movie if it wasn't Batman. If you wrote these characters straight, but you could argue therein lies the issue. So I don't know yet exactly, but at this point in time, where I'm at in my brain, it's an 8 out of 10. So that's where I stand with the Batman. And I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please feel free to hit that thumbs up button. If you're new and you'd like to subscribe to my channel, you can click on my face right about there, and you can check out past reviews on superhero movies right along that way. So until the next one, guys, bye bye.